Welcome, everyone, to another edition of CPAC Live. On today's show, we're going to be talking about the importance of faith and the policies around faith. And we're going to talk to Father Frank Pavone, and we're going to give you a best of from our most recent CPAC Minnesota, which was a great event in Minneapolis, where our executive director, Dan Schneider, is going to be talking with the president of Students Supporting Israel, Elon, and they're going to have a fascinating conversation about the Trump policies in Israel and how it's literally changing the Middle East and really changing the world. It's one of the greatest accomplishments of the Trump era is this new and fresh approach to getting these peace deals, these basically bilateral peace deals with the state of Israel with these Arab countries, which is just an amazing thing to watch unfold. And Jared Kushner and the team, Mike Pompeo, deserve great credit for everything they've done. After this, we're going to show you a new ad that our Super PAC has mounted and has come up with, and I think it's wonderful. Jason Meath has been the talent on this particular ad. Our board member, Charlie Giroux, has been doing a great job with a lot of our other digital ads. As you know, we have mounted this campaign focused on America versus socialism. You can go to our website and get the t-shirt. It has all the towns we've been in, and we've been in a lot of towns. It always starts with having these great CPAC events, which we've had in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Michigan, and as I mentioned, in Minnesota. So CPAC has been in the battleground states talking to activists about the issues that matter. We've had a much more campaign theme in all these events because that's the top thing on, I think, all of our heads is what's going to happen to America if we lose to a Democratic Party that has embraced socialism. So I think you're going to love the ad. I'm so proud of the work that the team has done with all these CPACs. And for me personally, and for my wife, Mercedes, who literally just landed at Reagan Airport. I love saying Reagan Airport, coming back from her home state of Florida, where she was with Sarah Sanders and Ivanka Trump. She's been traveling with Ivanka for the last 2 weeks. The kids miss her, but they know it's for an important cause. And I was just jotting down with Dan and Jonathan and the team here some of the states I've been in the last 2 weeks. I've been to Nevada twice. I've been to Michigan, been to Ohio, been to Iowa, been to Florida, been to North Carolina twice, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Kansas. I might have some more travels coming up. I know this week, tomorrow, I'm leaving again for Ohio, where I'm going to see my good friend Bob Paduchik, who's running, or at least is a senior advisor to the Trump-Pence campaign out there. So I think all of us are doing everything we can to not leave anything on the field, to get every vote we can. And after we watch these great conversations, I'm going to come back to you and talk to you about what's going on in polling and why you can't let them discourage you, which is exactly what they're trying to do. But now, first, watch this great new ad that comes from our Super PAC.
There is a set of issues upon which Catholics must not disagree. A Biden presidency would be a danger to our already dwindling religious liberty. His presidency would undoubtedly open the door for America to very quickly become a socialist country. For more than 200 years, wherever socialism has sought to gain a foothold, the socialists have viewed the Catholic Church as an enemy to be destroyed.
The Catholic Church in the United States experienced a series of attacks this weekend.
Churches spray painted with political messages.
Shocked to see a statue of the Blessed Mother Mary vandalized.
Mob rule is one of the chief tactics and strategies of socialism, and in a perverse twist of irony, the same socialist mobs who like to chant "silence is violence" reaped the benefit of the several months-long silence of Joe Biden and his party.
A week after looting decimated many parts of the city,
As the mobs carried out their orchestrated campaign of violence in America's cities.
resentment is simmering in those communities.
So the bottom line, brothers and sisters, is vote.
American Conservative Union Super PAC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Well, we are now joined by Father Frank Pavone, a wonderful Christian witness on the importance of protecting the rights of the unborn and other human dignity issues. Father Pavone, great to have you on CPAC Live.
Hey, Matt, it's a real pleasure to be with you again. Thank you so much.
We've been spending a lot of time digitally, it seems like, talking about these important issues. Are we getting used to this yet?
Yeah, I think, ever since the pandemic broke out, I mean, we've been together more than we were in person when we were on the road. But it's been very effective, actually. I think we have been able to really galvanize a lot of people across this country that are believing in the same things that we are and fighting the same battles.
Now, one of the things you're doing digitally is offering Mass online each day. Is that correct?
That's right, Matt. Ever since the middle of March, we've had online masses. So many people who couldn't get into their churches were so grateful for this opportunity, and we've kept it up ever since. And large audience throughout the states and also from different parts of the world.
And we're still doing a rosary nightly at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with many of our board members. So if anybody wants information on that, they can join. I know that there's so many believers across the country who are coming together, whether on teleconferences or whatever means to come together, because we need each other. This idea that everybody can be a contemplative, Father, is not accurate.
We need each other, and we need each other across denominational lines. And, yes, as I'm sure is true for you, I've always found one of the greatest joys of this pro-life, pro-family, conservative values movement is that it is bringing the body of Christ together. The differences now are more horizontal than vertical. It used to be that, well, if this person is in that denomination, the Baptists, the Presbyterians, and so forth, I don't have that much in common with them. But now these cultural battles have made it so that I have more in common with a pro-life Baptist than I have with some of my brother priests. And because there are some that it's like they don't believe that what the Bible actually says is really true, or what the teachings have always been about family and marriage and life. So we're coming together in the name of these key values.
Well, when you see all of this going on across the country, obviously we've had this big racial kind of explosion, this animosity, this violence, these race riots across the country. And obviously Jesus was very clear on us loving our neighbor and treating them as we want to be treated. So this whole idea of racism is really a repugnant sin. By the same token, you see groups like Black Lives Matter Incorporated and other groups that have in their very kind of manifesto, their mission statement, the destruction of the family because it's kind of a Western civilization appendage. We've seen the desecration of churches, statues of Mary and Jesus burned, destroyed, cemeteries, Jewish cemeteries desecrated. Are we falling into a bit of chaos here?
This is total chaos. Matt, isn't it interesting that we who stand up for the right to express our religious beliefs without people attacking it either verbally or physically, or we who stand up for the equality of every human being, born and unborn, that we are the ones being called divisive, or when the president stands up and defends these values in his speeches or in his policies, that he's called divisive. And meanwhile, we're the ones that are uniting the country on the very values on which it was founded. These folks that are doing this chaos, doing this violence, are the ones who are needlessly dividing people from one another and abandoning the very principles that both the gospel and the country are founded on.
And specifically, they also are clamoring for 9 months of legal abortions, taxpayer-funded abortions. This is a clear threat to diverse communities, specifically the African-American community, where abortion is a great tragic result of, I would say, the destruction of the family and the failure to understand what a precious life God gives us through the unborn child.
Well, as you know, Alveda King is a member of our team here at Priests for Life, and she's been saying this constantly. She says, first of all, don't slap the word racism on everything that you disagree with or that you hate, because then you're going to render yourself incapable of dealing with real racism when it raises its ugly head. But then secondly, looking at why is racism wrong in the first place, anything that looks down on a whole group of human beings as being less valuable simply because they belong to that group is a fundamental error, but that's the very error that is at the basis of legal abortion. We're taking the unborn, we're taking a whole group of human beings in the first months of their existence, and we're saying because you belong to that group, you're not a person, which is exactly what Roe v. Wade said. They are not persons. You're less valuable. You can be disposed of. So if a person is against racism, they've got to be, in order to be logically consistent and morally consistent, they've got to be against abortion too, because it's oppressing this entire group of people. And this is the message Alveda gives all over the country, that the civil rights movement of today is the pro-life movement. Same principles that her uncle Martin Luther King Jr. was fighting for, the equality of every human being.
And we all have gotten a crash course because the media likes to gloss over it, and the eugenics and racism of Margaret Sanger, founder of Planned Parenthood, that people need to realize that one of the main reasons to push for legal abortion was to get rid of people they thought were less than. They didn't think were equal to white Americans. And this kind of disgusting racist ideology, went global. And we should go back and look at that history, and we should call it out.
When people see what Margaret Sanger said and the philosophy that is at the root of Planned Parenthood, they are astonished. This documentary has been out for some time now, Maafa 21, Maafa being the Swahili word for a devastation, and 21 for the 21st century. Maafa 21 has documented irrefutably the racist foundations of the abortion industry and of Planned Parenthood in particular. And Matt, it's really waking up the Black community. Whether through Alveda's work or a number of other Black leaders in what they call the National Black Coalition for Life, they're saying, we never realized this. But here's a dilemma then that occurs. The Black pastors and Black citizens who are so pro-life and they're so much valuing their families, they see this, they realize that this is another form of oppression for them and really genocide. And they rise up in anger against that. But then they come up against their political supporters, and they find a party, the Democrat Party, being so allied and just joined at the hip with the abortion industry. They feel torn. They don't know what to do. They say abortion is an outrage. It's an outrage against our community. Why don't our political leaders see that? And that's the stage at which many in the Black community are right now, and they're wrestling with that tension.
Well, and a Gallup poll came out last week showing that 25% of African Americans in this country would label themselves as conservative. Now, that could be, there's a lot of different stripes of conservatism. That could be limited government, lower taxes. It could be the fact that they go to church and they have more traditional views on cultural questions like life. But my interaction with people in this community is that they view abortion to be a great tragedy. And it might be one of the reasons why there's a rethinking about whether or not the Republican Party is the right place to express themselves politically, because it's where they express themselves, obviously, at the creation of the Republican Party, which was, which was interwoven with this idea of being an abolitionist movement. The Republican Party is the party that's an abolitionist movement when it comes to the question of abortion and equal rights for the unborn, but also equal rights for all people, as you said, this idea of human dignity. Do you think they're looking at these pro-life policies from the Trump administration and being voiced by the president in ways that we haven't heard presidents voice? I mean, very clear language. Do you think that's actually having a good effect as these communities face the trauma of abortion?
Oh, a very good effect. And I've seen this rethinking all over the place as I travel with Alveda and as we bring people online and we talk with pastors and other leaders. There really is a political rethinking going on. As they face that tension that I described, they realize, hey, wait a minute, there is an alternative here. And, a lot of them are feeling like the Democrat Party has really abandoned their core values. And when you add on top of the whole abortion question and the promotion of abortion without restrictions among the Democrat camp, then they see the question of the freedom of the church, because for the Black community, I mean, the church is a key element of their life and of their community. And to see efforts to restrict the freedom of the church or to force believers to have to choose between following the law and following their faith, as we saw with that HHS mandate under the Obama administration, which of course now President Trump has changed in order to more generously accommodate believers. But when they look at that, they can't believe it. They say, this is not a country where we're supposed to be forced to choose between following our faith and following the law. And they're going to say, I think more and more of them, as they go forward in their political choices, they're going to say, well, who really respects my freedom? We talk about freedom. Who respects my freedom to worship God in the way I choose as an American citizen?
Father, I know that legal jurisprudence is not what you've spent your life studying, but you have to deal with the consequences of a lot of bad judicial decisions, and it makes us all kind of take a crash course in legal scholarship.
It does.
We see these people, including John Roberts, unfortunately, a lot of Catholics who have been picked to serve on the court have disappointed us on really key questions. And so you have this whole idea. We also have other Catholics who have just been fantastic, other Christians who have been fantastic on the bench. What's the right strategy? I've now said, and I said it again this week, I think I'm done with plucking these lawyers out of obscurity and putting them on the bench. I wonder if the courts are going to act so political, almost like a Congress, maybe we ought to just pick really good legislators like Ted Cruz and Mike Lee and elevate them to serve on the Supreme Court. Do you share my frustration?
Yes. I think there would be wisdom in that approach that you just described. I know a lot of people who like that idea very much. But if we keep going back to the core point that the president has made it over and over again. It's like, look, we do have a constitution, and the Constitution quite clearly lays out what the courts are and aren't supposed to do. We need judges who are going to take that Constitution as it's written and as it's originally intended and apply it to the cases that come before them. To the cases that come before them, not in this, one of the things that bothers me so much too are these nationwide injunctions that these judges think that they can slap on the entire country. It's like, you weren't put on the bench to decide questions for the whole nation. You were put on the bench to decide cases and controversies that come before you in your courtroom, period. And I think we need a lot more restraint. We need people to understand that, these judges and these courts are meant to take the Constitution and the laws as they're written. Now, I think that if we apply that principle, that we're in the overall balance going to come out fine. In other words, we're always going to have disappointments, even betrayals, Matt. I think we can characterize a lot of these situations as betrayals. But in the overall balance, if you've got I think we've got to look at what our senators are saying and what our president is saying about, they're the ones who are going to determine what kind of men and women get on these courts. And if they're saying, yes, I want someone who's going to be faithful to the text and meaning of the Constitution and the laws, then overall we're going to come out great. But as you're saying, a little bit more thinking about, who's being selected in that process. And hey, let's let them have a clear record. Let's let them they could be as much of an advocate as they want to be before they get onto the bench. Yeah, let's look for the ones that we know have been laboring with us right side by side in all these battles. Those are the kind of men and women we want on the courts.
And even when people of faith are picked to serve on the court, when believers are picked to serve on the court, they can't make up out of whole cloth this idea of a law that would reflect maybe what we want to see happen. If it's not there, in the
No, that's right.
the wording of the text. And so we're actually not looking for conservative activism. We're actually looking for just a strict constitutional interpretation. And when I saw what Amy Coney Barrett had to go through, this former Notre Dame law professor who now serves on the federal bench, when I saw what she had to go through with her hearing, with them scrutinizing the fact, could you actually be a believing Catholic and civilly serve our government? It really harkened back to anti-Catholic bigotry of old. And then I've been digging into it a little more and looking at these questions that Senator Kamala Harris sent in to Catholic nominees, especially those that had the audacity, Father, of being in the Knights of Columbus, an organization, a fraternal organization that encourages men to be good fathers and good husbands and stay close to the church and do works of charity. The idea that she would equate a group like the Knights of Columbus, which has members in parishes all over this country and probably all over the world, the idea that that could be equated to a hate group because this organization, the Knights, stays very close and accepts the teachings of our church. What's your reaction to that?
It's very disturbing, Matt. It really is, because when you look at carefully at what people like Senator Harris and Senator Feinstein and Senator Durbin, a number of them in some of these Judiciary Committee hearings have the line of questioning to Catholic nominees, what you see there is the mindset that the dogmas we hold in the church in regard to things like abortion, the nature of marriage as being between one man and one woman, the nature of the family, and so on, they take a view of those things as if you would think somebody is talking about racism, like we were talking about before. And followed to its logical conclusion, not only are they, I mean, constitutionally, they're in the wrong because they are trying to do what the Constitution says exactly we cannot do, which is impose a religious test for any office in the United States. There is no room for a religious test one way or the other in public office. But then aside from that, what followed to its logical conclusion, this is all part of like what remember back in 2015, Hillary Clinton gave a speech in which she said, you know, the fundamental religious beliefs have to be changed. Structures and beliefs have to be changed if we're going to go forward with our agenda. Or when Beto O'Rourke said that maybe churches that believe marriage is one man and one woman shouldn't be tax exempt anymore. This is the direction that this whole mindset goes. It leads to nothing less than the persecution of the church. And we've got to really be looking at that and taking those concerns into account.
Last question, Father Pavone. As people of faith look at how they determine who to vote for,
yes,
and we've talked about this radical embrace of the abortion culture by the Democratic Party, what is a person of faith to do? There are lots of Catholics, for instance, who are Democrats. A lot of people in my family who go to church and believe in the church, but are also liberal. They're in a terrible position. If you believe in bigger government, but you believe in the sanctity of life, the Democratic Party is putting them in a very interesting position.
You know, the bishops have spoken about this, and if I could give people a resource, you know, the United States bishops issued a document called Living the Gospel of Life. And I want to encourage, especially Catholic voters, but any American citizen will find a great guidance in that document, to look it up. Gospeloflife.net is where folks can go to find it. And here's the point that the bishops make. There's a lot of issues. They're all interconnected in one way or another. And they use the analogy, Matt, of a house. And they said, you know, all these human rights issues interconnect. But what's the foundation of the house? The foundation of the house is the right to life. Nobody says abortion is the only issue. But if you attack the right to life directly, like abortion does, you can't have any other issue. If life isn't valuable, if on the other hand it's disposable, then why care for the poor? Why care about health care? Why protect people from crime or terrorism? Why be concerned about racism? Why be concerned about any of these things if the person doesn't matter. If life is disposable, well, then not much problem with poverty and terrorism. So it's the heart and soul of every issue. And this is the moral guidance. It's not political advocacy. It's moral guidance that the church gives to voters and says, look, here's where we begin, the bishops say. We begin with the intention never to kill the innocent. You can't do it. And any state that does it, here's where John Paul II comes in. He wrote that tremendous encyclical, The Gospel of Life. What John Paul said is actually very dramatic. He says, when a state legalizes abortion, and now these are his words, it becomes a tyrant state. He said the disintegration, now I'm quoting him exactly once again, the disintegration of the state itself has begun. That doesn't sound like just one issue to me. That sounds like the foundation itself. And again, this is the guidance that the Holy Father and the bishops have given. And again, not only to Catholics, but it's something all Americans should heed.
Yeah, for sure. And also, just to put a final point on that, it's a grave moral sin, obviously, this question of killing an unborn child. And then it's so tragic to see them take the next step. And people like Joe Biden, who for decades supported not using taxpayer funds to pay for these abortions,
right,
now believes that his parishioners, I'm told he goes to a church, St. Joseph Church in Delaware, he wants all his fellow parishioners and his pastor to help pay, to be forced to pay for these abortions, which even if you buy the pro-choice ideology, once you start being financially complicit in this grave sin, you talk about a tyrant state. That's the worst form of big government there could possibly be, to use your taxpayer money to pay for something you think is actually going to be destructive of society.
You know, isn't it interesting, Matt? They say the woman has a right to do what she wants with her body, but we don't have the right to do what we want with our money. Right.
No, that's very well said. Father Pavone, please keep all of our work in your prayers as you offer up during the Holy Sacrifice of the Mass today. Thanks for all your important words as the country faces these really, unfortunately, controversial questions, moral questions in our society. But we really appreciate your work. And say hello to Alvita.
Sure will. And Matt, thank you for all your great work as well. We'll talk to you soon.
Please welcome to the stage Elon, Sinelsakov, and ACU Executive Director Dan Schneider.
I'm suddenly up here a lot.
How are you? Hello, everyone.
Elon, where are you from?
So I'm originally from Israel. My parents are from the Soviet Union. I was the first generation in my family to be born in Israel, and now I'm living the American dream. Excited to be here in Minnesota.
How many of you have been to CPAC before, our big national CPAC event? We have a straw poll, and we always ask questions. We just took a part 2 version of that straw poll. You don't know this, but one of the questions we asked in this straw poll is, would you support a president who does not believe that Israel should be able to protect the strategic heights and the holy sites? And on the CPAC straw poll, the answer was somewhere around 3% would support a president who would not support that, whereas 90+% of conservatives think that that is important. Why is it important to stand with Israel?
Well, standing with Israel, it's not even a conservative or a liberal value. It's an American value to stand with Israel. Israel, it's America's, thank you. Israel, it's America's #1 ally in the Middle East. And I'm old enough to remember back in September 11th of 2001, when the World Trade Centers went down, when the neighboring countries across Israel were burning American flags and celebrating with candies, Israelis were the first people to stand up with America in that region. So supporting Israel, it's an important American value.
Now, we do CPACs all over the world, Australia and Japan and Brazil. 3 years ago, we did a mini CPAC in Israel. I was shocked to learn this, that the Palestinian Authority and others.
And when you go to those college campuses, you see that there are people and students and professors and faculty that claim that Jews are not indigenous to the land of Israel, which is a complete nonsense. The Jewish people are coming from the land of Israel, from Judea and Samaria. That's where our language, our culture, and our traditions were established at. And Jerusalem, it's our capital city. That's why we're very thankful to President Donald Trump that moved the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, where it's supposed to be.
I am not kidding you. When these sites are excavated and coins with the image of King David are found, the Palestinian Authority literally claims that people went there in the middle of the night and buried them and then dug them back up. Is this the first time any of you are hearing this? That this is the story? I mean, it's really amazing.
Yeah. You know, I'm actually, when I travel across the country to different universities, over there we hear that all the time. But this is why we are here, to share the truth. We are here to share the history and support our Jewish brothers and sisters and Israelis like me. Because a lot of times it seems like everything is so far apart. Israel is 6,000 miles away. But every decision that is being made here, your support here in Minnesota, impact the daily life of millions of Israelis on the ground. And this is why it's important to go out and share the story of Israel, to share the story of the Jewish people, and to keep strengthening the connection between our countries.
Yeah. Now, I loved Ronald Reagan. And Ronald Reagan promised that he'd move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. Didn't get it done. Every president has promised. When candidate Trump said that he was going to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, did you believe him?
You know, it was hard for me to believe anything that politicians were saying in the administration and the State Department in the recent years. But President Trump, he didn't only move the embassy to Jerusalem. He recognized Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. He withdrew out of the worst deal that the United States have ever signed with Iran, the #1 support of terror in the world. So President Trump did more for the Middle East and for the people that live there than any other administration in the history of this country.
Now, one last thing. President Trump is pro-Israel, but that does not mean he's anti-other Middle East countries. So we both had the pleasure of being at the White House at the signing ceremony of 2 peace treaties between Israel and other Middle Eastern countries. Last question. What does that mean for peace in the world?
I'm 27 years old, and I've never witnessed in my lifetime when Israel signed an agreement with other Arab countries that shows that Jews and Muslims can live in the Middle East side by side without fighting and coexist. And when I went to the White House about a month ago in September of this year and I saw the agreement signing, I could not believe to what I see, because for me it was history in the making. We are standing in days that we're going to see a better Middle East, when Israel is going to start working with Bahrain, with the United Arab Emirates, and only today Sudan announced that they're on their way to create a normalization agreements with the State of Israel as well. So I'm thankful that I have the opportunity to witness history and to be a part of it last month.
And I want to thank everybody who has been standing alongside ACU and with our CPAC events. We have so many great volunteers and supporters around the country. We also have a lot of new donors, which is really exciting, because I think there's a lot of people that want to invest in the conservative cause, and the traditional ways of doing it are leaving some people feeling like it's not getting the job done. And I'm very complimented. I know the team here at ACU is complimented that they believe that we're part of the solution. And if you want to continue to contribute to this America versus Socialism campaign, we can up all of our buys still. So it's not too late to donate. If you want to, just go to our website at conservative.org or give us a call and talk to Lynn in our development office, and we'll talk to you about what the options are. One of the things that is distressing for so many people that consume a lot of news, and I don't even know where to consume my news anymore, which is one of the reasons why we're doing this show. And a big shout out to Scott Nitzel, who's got a little bit of a copycat version of CPAC Live going on in Minnesota, where they're doing their own digital conversations as well, because we're all trying to figure out, how do you get news in an era where so much of it is slanted, or so much of it capture. There's a media outfit in the country that's polling properly from my point of view. My strongest grades in school was never math. But understanding what they're doing with polling is not just math. What they're doing is trying to push this idea that the Democrats will turn out at a over 40 up to 48% turnout model. And Republicans and Trump supporters are so discouraged that we'll only turn out at a 25% turnout model. So the reason why you see these huge leads, and I think Real Clear Politics has Joe Biden's lead nationwide at 6 or 7 points, I think it's 7, is because so many of the polls that make up that average are media polls that think that we're discouraged, that we're really not going to turn out, because the only Republicans they know are Lincoln Project, Swamp, New York City, Washington, D.C. Republicans who don't like the fact that Trump has been so stridently conservative. In the end, that's what the real problem that the Lincoln Project and these other groups have. It's really not with Trump's style, although I know they don't like his style either. It's more that he's actually doing the things and making previous Republicans look like patsies because they told us they would do it, but then they'd only do a little bit of it, whereas Trump really does it. And moving the embassy in Jerusalem is one example. I was at the White House for the swearing in of Amy Coney Barrett, our new Associate Justice to the Supreme Court. She hopefully will be another example. It's certainly incredibly promising when you hear what she says and you read the opinion she's already written on the circuit court. These are just two examples of what Donald Trump has been able to do. So when you look at these polls and you see these huge skews, the Washington Post, some people call it the Compost, came out this morning with a poll that shows the president down 17 points in Wisconsin. Rasmussen and Trafalgar, what you'll see is a turnout model that more roughly equates to what happened last time. And all I can say is the dynamic of this race just is eerily familiar to last time. You're discouraged because you see poll after poll where Donald Trump is down. Even in Rasmussen, the states are very tight. These battleground states are very tight. Trafalgar had a couple of 3 polls that came out yesterday, which showed Trump with slight leads in important states like North Carolina and Florida, but they're still tight. So if they're going to steal, if we're going to have a lot of problems with mail-in ballots, if for some reason there's weather or other reasons why people don't turn out, maybe the lines are too long. I'm sure we've all had that problem with long lines in the past where it's hard to stay there for the time it takes. Things can shift. So it's dramatically important that we do everything we can between now and Election Day. If you want to help us with our America versus Socialism campaign, call us, get on our website, give us the fuel we need to keep going. As I said, Mercy's just coming in for a short break. She'll be back on the trail. I'm leaving tomorrow to get back on the trail. In the meantime, we're going to do everything we can to keep pushing. Every moment counts, and don't get discouraged. I believe we're going to win this race. I know my wife feels the same way. There's a lot of people praying for the president, praying for the country. They believe that socialism is such a menace to America that it's not just about losing to Democrats. It's about losing to people that want to transform the country. We had 8 years of the beginning parts of that transformation, and it was painful. It made us less wealthy. It made us less healthy. It destroyed our healthcare system. We picked judges that made law instead of reading the letter of the law, and it's had a very negative consequence on the country. The full embrace of socialism that we see with the squad, with Pelosi, with those around Joe Biden, and with Joe Biden's abysmal voting record for the years he was in the Senate, which we have here at ACU. You should go on our website and look at that. It's really alarming. When people tell you, oh, Joe Biden's a good guy, he's just surrounded by socialists, it's not true. His voting record is abysmal. And Kamala Harris had the worst voting record you could imagine. She had a 0 in our ACU ratings last year. So be of good cheer. There's lots of great news out there. I'll keep reporting from the road. Every moment counts. I hope you like the new ad. Thank you to Charlie Giroux for the great job he's done with our digital advertising, and Jason Killian-Meath, who not only did this most recent ad with the Catholic theme, but also was the lead on our documentary, which will be coming out soon as well, which I'm sure we'll be sharing with you shortly. I'll talk to you again soon. Let's go save America.